How's it going, everyone? Welcome to my video and welcome to my YouTube channel. I hope you are all doing well. If you are new to the channel or just somehow stumbled upon this video, we like to talk about chess and chess players, games, things like that. So feel free to smash that subscribe button. We really appreciate it. And what I want to talk about today is the freestyle chess tournament that commenced today. And let's go ahead and go over here. Now, freestyle chess, I'd say like the past year or so, I think it was kind of founded in like last year, if I'm not mistaken. Freestyle chess has been a very polarizing topic. If you don't know what freestyle chess is, there is a little bit of confusion. So the format of chess that freestyle chess oftentimes plays is chess 960. Chess 960 is where the like pieces on the back row are kind of randomized, and there are some constraints, of course, but freestyle chess is the company that is sort of like sponsoring these tournaments. And like, I mean, if you're not living under a rock, you sort of know like they're basically trying to like revolutionize chess and like just like have all these like player perks and like overtake FIDE and things like that. And there's been a lot of controversy and polarization that's kind of come around it. I think like I mean, I don't know. There are multiple ways to look at it. I think like there was a time when a lot of people thought it was actually the next greatest thing, but then like shout out to rest in peace Dale Naroditsky. I think like when everyone turned to left, he kind of turned to right, and he was just kind of like, well, are we really like gonna teach like kids like chess 960? Like it's kind of ridiculous. But I think like freestyle chess. One thing where I will give them credit is I've complained a lot about chess marketing to where like basically the United States Chess Championship could start and like no one knew until the day of. I do give them credit for their marketing team or like their PR campaign, whoever. Like they put out a lot of events, just like the underwater championship. They had like a helicopter event, like cooking, things like that. So they've had a lot of media kind of leading up to the event. So for that reason, and sad that's a low bar to set, but I knew about this event like 4 or 5 days before it happened or it actually started. So I do give freestyle chess credit on that. But yeah, you can see here it's kind of the last of like the Grand Slam tour. Now, don't begin to ask me like what the format is and everything like that. It is a series of tournaments, as you can see here. It's like covers Germany, France, United States, and South Africa. And there's a $750,000 prize pool, I think, for this individual tournament. And you see the players here: Magnus Fabiano, Vincent Keimer, Arjun Erigaisi, Levon Aronian, Hans Niemann, Parham Maksudlu, and Jakovir Sindarov, whom this video is kind of about. And Sindarov is a name that you should be watching out for if you aren't already. He won the World Cup, which I don't think is necessarily the most unknown. So it's not like no one's ever heard of him, but he's like world number 2021 or something like that. But yeah, anyway, so basically how this tournament works is on day one, the players let me see, I'm actually covering some guys. It's fine, I'm covering Sindarov. It's okay. The video is about Sindarov. We can cover him. So, day one is like a round robin among the players. Then dates two and like three, and I don't know if there's a fourth day, but basically the remaining days is kind of the knockout. The round robin determines like seeding and things like that. So, basically they're all playing each other on this day. The time control for today is 10+5. And I want to highlight Sindarov's game. Sindarov had three sort of really good games against Magnus Carlsen, against Fabiano Caruana, whoops, and against Hans Niemann. Didn't mean to spoil, but I don't think much spoiler is needed here. And just want to go over these games. Actually, I'm going to change this here just a little bit, just so that nothing spoilers or anything like that. Obviously, when you see a freestyle chess game, the first thing that you kind of think of is like, okay, the starting position is quite different. You don't see the traditional king and queen, and then two bishops, and then two knights, and things like that. It's a little bit different. Now, there are some constraints. It's not like they're completely randomized. The main constraints are that the rooks have to be on like one side or the other. Not necessarily on these squares. It is kind of funny that the rooks still start on A1 and H1, but the rooks have to be on one side or the other with the king in between them. And also the bishops have to be on opposite colors because they don't want freestyle games with, or chess 960 games with the bishops on the same color. So this video isn't necessarily to go into the nitty gritty as to like what the strategy is on move one and things like that, but it is pretty interesting. Like you see a lot of you see a lot more innovations, like earlier opening mistakes and ideas and things like that. So I think that'd be pretty interesting to look at. So I believe this is round one. Jakovir Sindarov is white against Magnus Carlsen. Also, a couple other anecdotes is that I think Hikaru Nakamura was originally scheduled to play, but he's not playing due to the expected birth of his child. I don't know if it's a son or daughter, but shout out to him. Congratulations. And Sindarov is also playing this on his 20th birthday. So he really is a birthday boy this day. So in this game, Sindarov plays e4, Magnus plays e5. Sindarov plays c3 with the idea to expand the center with d4. And Magnus, and this is a pretty typical theme in just regular chess anyway. Like if you have this like kind of c3 plan to go d5, Magnus strikes in the center first with d5. Like you see it, for example, in the Alpen Sicilian, which is e4, c5, c3, and black can oftentimes just try to kill the game with d5. Here you kind of see the same theme. Now, Magnus plays d5. The pawn's not protected, but Magnus does plan to win the pawn back. So after d5, Jakovir just takes the pawn, and then plays queen b5 check, which forks the king and the pawn. After queen e2, queen takes d5, knight e3, queen d7. Here, Jakovir plays knight f3, and you might see a move like c5. I saw this move. I'm like, wait, what's the idea? Well, the knight is attacking the pawn on e5, so black is going to play either c6, c5, or potentially f6. But I don't think f6 is a very good move. It actually kind of looks ugly. So Magnus plays c5. I mean, you might as well like put a grip on the d4 square, but also you're protecting the pawn with the bishop. Now here, Jakovir plays a very enterprising pawn break that I really liked. This square is protected twice. Actually 3 times, my bad. It's kind of backed up by the queen. But Jakovir does not care. He plays d4 anyway. Jakovir plays d4, and the idea is that he's just going to blow open the position, while this king is going to have a hard time castling. And we'll get to that here in a second. We'll talk about the legalities of how to castle and everything like that. Basically, the idea behind castling is that you just put the king on wherever it would normally go if it were to castle that way, no matter the distance. So normally when you castle king side, it's on g1, on the other side c1. So if the bishops were cleared, you could hypothetically castle long by going king f1 to c1 and then rook to d1. But here, we're going to see Magnus is going to have trouble with this king. And after d4, pawn takes, pawn takes, pawn takes, Jakovir just goes knight f5. And once again, like the knight is protected by the bishop. There are 2 attackers on the knight, but the queen is leading, which means it doesn't really matter. And the knight on f5 is kind of like helping and kind of chip away at this pawn, but also, after knight c6, Jakovir plays this move b3, and his intentions are quite clear, to go bishop a3 and harass the king. Now, I'm not exactly sure, I don't know if Magnus like didn't realize this or kind of underestimated his plan or whatever. Magnus just went knight g to e7, which is a mistake. Because knight g to e7 allows bishop a3, and bishop a3 basically just like makes Magnus suffer the rest of the game. I think the better variation instead of knight g to e7 was to play a move like, I think the move here, well, there were a couple of moves. There was like, I think there was knight f6 with the idea that bishop a3, you just move the king to g8. And like, okay, maybe like you don't get to castle, but you do tuck the king away on g8. And like maybe this rook will be used for like an h5, h4 catapult. You never know. But I think the other move was simply bishop d6, which covers the a3 square. And after bishop d6, white castles and then takes the bishop, then goes a4. There's a variation that goes something like this. And ultimately, black's going to be fine. I mean, they're up a pawn, although white's probably going to win it back at some point with like rook d1. And yeah, they just kind of equalize for the most part and are doing fine. So, after b3, Magnus, now again, like, I'm never one to criticize a 6-time world champion and multi-time world rapid and blitz champion, so I'm not sure if he, like, missed the idea, if he thought that he was already worse, and might as well. I don't know what his thought process was. I haven't really watched any, like, commentary or anything like that. I just go straight into the games. He plays knight g to e7, and allowing bishop a3, and yeah, simply, and this is a pretty elementary concept, you can't castle because white has 1, 2, 3 attackers on the knight, and black does have 1, 2, 3 defenders, but one of them is the king. So that attack kind of restricts you from being able to castle. You see that in some openings where, you don't castle yet, and then you might have like a pinned bishop on e7, and white plays like queen e2. and like basically just puts pressure on the bishop. You can't castle because then they would take, just something like that. If I have time to remember to edit, I'll edit in these like kind of diagrams so that you sort of know what's going on. But anyway, and yeah, basically from here, Jakovir is just kind of pressing Magnus. A very ironic statement, but Magnus is kind of on the back foot here. Jakovir wins the pawn back, Magnus trades on f5, and once again, you're still dealing with this pin with the knight on e7. Magnus tries to play g6, but then Jakovir trades, goes bishop e4, and then Magnus tries to play bishop d6. So finally, he broke this pin, right? Well, he did, but Magnus created a new pin with rook d1. And quite simply, like, Magnus just has to sacrifice the queen. Like, there's nothing else you can do. Like, dare I suggest a move like knight c8? I think, well, you can just take the pawn pretty easily. But I feel like there's even, like, other ideas. But this is just simply humiliating. Even queen d3 is a really good move to just put pressure on the bishop. But Magnus sacrificed the queen, just tried to get some fortress, but ultimately it was not enough. Jakovir is a really good player and has good technique. And a few moves later, it was just too overwhelming for Magnus, and Jakovir went on to win this game. So that was round one. Jakovir starting with a bang. I think Magnus ended up kind of coming back, having a decent tournament. I know he beat Hans. I know he beat someone else. But Magnus, I think he got fourth place in the round robin, if I'm not mistaken. Which, again, the round robin is mainly for seeding, so it's not really the biggest determination. But it does actually help, because if you get first place, which Jakovir did... Jakovir got first, right? No. Who got first? Was it Jakovir? I think it was Jakovir. Yes, Jakovir got first, and so you get to choose your opponent, which kind of helps. We'll go to that in a second. A few rounds happened. I think Jakovir had a draw. They beat Paramaksudlu at some point, and in this game, I thought was very interesting against Fabiano Caruana. Because, again, you have a new starting position. This one, the rooks are on b1 and e1. The bishops are on a1. I mean, you know, but what I found interesting is Fabiano's first two moves of choice. Which, this first move, b4, it's not necessarily uncommon in freestyle. Like, oftentimes, like, obviously in regular chess, this move sucks because you don't have any defenders. There could easily be a target, which I guess there is for black, but I think the idea is that the rook is already protecting the pawn. Interestingly, the computer loves f5 here. Like, don't ask me why, but I do find that pretty interesting. But Jakovir plays the e5, which is also fine. It's the second best move. It puts pressure on the pawn. And Fabi plays g4. So I thought g4 and b4, the combination was really, really, really interesting. My theory is that when Jakovir committed the pawn on e5, he wanted to make sure that no matter which knight kind of stepped forward, that he had a plan for it. Like, if Jakovir just plays knight c6 on move 2, then I believe Fabi would have b5. Now, of course, Engine's just telling me, yeah, there's knight d4, so maybe my theory's wrong. I'm not exactly sure, but I saw that pretty interesting. And again, that's the beauty of freestyle chess. You just see, you have to have like a position where on move 2, you play g4 and b4. So, I mean, g4 helps open the queen, but also it's exposed by the bishop. I'm not exactly sure what's going on there. So, anyway, Jakovir plays f6, and Fabiano plays bishop g2, and then immediately goes h5. So Jakovir notices that Fabi kind of created a weakness with this g4 move and instantly exploits it, with the queen backing it up. And oftentimes, even without a queen or a rook backing up that pawn, h5 can be a really good move, just to sacrifice the pawn to obliterate the pawn structure, but he already has a queen on h8, might as well just use it, right? So Jakovir does take, and a few more moves are played. He reroutes the queen to f7, which does attack the pawn, and Fabiano defended it with knight c3, but again, don't ask me why f4 is the best move here. f4 literally ignores the pawn, because I think if queen takes, there's this move bishop c3, and rook a8 check, or sorry, rook a1's an idea, and then after queen a3 is just lined with takes, and you can take here, and then after check, you go back. So black is up a pawn, but you go rook a1, and like, I don't know, somehow white has some compensation, but who knows? Again, don't ask me, right? I guess the idea is that the pawn is attacked, and if you, like, protect it, then it leaves some weaknesses. Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? But Fabi plays the logical human knight d to c3, protecting the pawn, and here Jakovir plays knight e6, and I think this was Fabi's mistake by castling. It's what the computer says, but I think the reason it's a mistake is because well, you're committing yourself to this side of the board, and like the queen is trapped, and like there's potential for a pawn play on that side of the board, not necessarily in the same way that white would have play here. And I think we kind of see that play out. Jakovir plays f5, Fabi plays f4, but Jakovir locks up the center with e4. And it's just going to kind of be a struggle. Like, you have so many weaknesses. The knight can come to g5, like the queen can fly in and things like that. There's just a lot going on in this position. D3, D5, a really thematic move by Fabi, just like, sorry, by Jakovir. Fabi trying to chip away at the pawn, but Jakovir saying, no, I'm going to put more reinforcements on it. And not only does Fabi have weaknesses, but Jakovir does not have very many weaknesses. He has a beautiful pawn chain spanning from b7 to e4 with f5, maybe g6 even in the cards at some point. Just rock solid, absolutely rock solid. And white does not have much, does not have a lot going for them. So bishop h3, b6, some moves are played. Black castled on this side of the board, so if the king's already on c8, you just flip the rook. And as we see, we actually had an example of a long castle earlier. You put the king where it would go if it were castling kingside, which is all the way to g1. So you go king from c1 to g1. He also plays the rook where it's supposed to be. So Jakovir castled kingside, or I don't know, castled this way. Jakovir castled to the left side, and it might look like Jakovir's king side is open as well, but it's going to be much easier to lock down the position after, like, you know, a4, b5, you play like c5, and it'll be harder to break through than it will be for black to sort of like exploit white. So anyway, just some moves are played. Not necessarily going to go into all the technicalities. That's why you have grandmasters on this earth. But basically, some trades happen, and I mean, Jakovir just suddenly gets this attack. I mean, like, that's just how it goes sometimes. Like, you just have a wide open king, and you have a weakness, and it's really hard to defend that weakness. And Fabi plays knight d6, and here Jakovir plays queen e7, which now you can see he's getting lower on time, and he used most of his remaining time on this move queen e7, but he did kind of miss this brilliancy with queen h2 check. Well, and you can actually play the brilliant move first. It doesn't really matter the order, but after queen h2, you're attacking the king and the knight, so king f2 is forced, and then this move, knight takes f4. The idea behind knight takes f4 being that pawn takes, then you go rook h4, and you attack the pawn on f2, sorry, on f4, and also the knight's likely going to fall. Now again, computer lines, Jakovir doesn't have a lot of time, so it's very understandable how he would miss it. So after knight d6, he just plays queen 7, but I mean, Jakovir's fine anyway. He just kind of like regroups his attack, gets the queen into the e3 square, and then after queen takes g3, finds this beautiful move, rook takes h3. The idea behind rook takes h3 is that you're prying open the king. Now, you don't just pry open the king just to pry open the king, right? But the idea is that after bishop takes h3, queen takes, king g1 is forced, and in the end, you go queen g4 and pick up the rook. And that is game. So with that, Jakovir moves, I don't know what his score was at the time, but he beats Fabi and he beats Magnus. Then in this game, we're going to look at a game he played against Hans Niemann. Can he complete the gauntlet of Magnus, Fabiano, and Hans? Let's see what he does here. This position is pretty interesting. It looks like the king's already kind of tucked away, but you would like to get the rook in the game ideally. The bishops are next to each other, the knight's in the corner. It's a pretty interesting starting position. So we kind of see from Sindarov the same theme that we saw from the previous game. Not only from that, but from Hans' response, which is e4, c5, well, sorry, e5. e4, e5, c3, d5. So I guess it goes to show, like, no matter what the configuration, you can generally rely on an e4, c3, d5 type break. And this is also similar to the Magnus game, because Magnus here just sacrificed a pawn. It's not like it was even protected. Same with Hans. Hans, you know, kind of scrapping a play from Magnus's playbook, and, you know, taking the pawn doesn't necessarily win the pawn because Hans can play knight b6, and then play c6. But it all kind of turned into a disaster here from the opening. Like, again, you know, once again, Jakovir plays his move d4, just prying open the king side. Then after pawn takes, knight takes. Again, I'm not really some chess authority to be able to tell you, like, what happened, but, like, I see like here the position's +2, and it's like, okay, that's not necessarily ideal. Maybe d5 wasn't the best way to approach it. I think computer was saying like knight f6 was a little better, maybe waiting to develop the knight, but honestly, I think d5 was a little bit rogue. I think you could have gone like knight f6 and then maybe play it more solidly with d6 and just try to like just have a game. But again, it's hindsight, and who am I to criticize these top grandmasters, right? But anyway, he plays c6 and ends up sacrificing a pawn when all is said and done. Not only sacrificing a pawn, but sacrificing his pawn structure as well. Hans is so desperate, he's like, I'll take the bishop pair, you know, if it means me doubling my pawns. And that's kind of what happens. And Jakovir kind of slips a little bit. Well, not slips. He does trade maybe one too many times and now gets a manageable position, or gets Hans into a manageable position after queen b2, and it's manageable because of the two bishops. You have two knights, one of them which is still in the corner, versus two bishops, and, you know, Hans is able to kind of hang in there, but eventually he kind of slips up. Because again, you have the two bishops, but if you don't really have targets, then what good are they? So Jakovir just has to make sure to not slip up, and then he has his knights that are harmony, and ultimately he is up a pawn. So some moves were played and eventually a trade happened and g3, now we're in like a time scramble, so you can see like the timestamps, like the players are really low in time. G3, Hans plays bishop takes g3, the idea being that pawn takes, then he'll just fly the queen in and just take the pawn. King f1, there's bishop d3, so you just gotta watch out for that sniper, right? But after, obviously Jakovir's not going to take the bishop because that would just be a forced draw. He goes queen b6, bishop d6, and in this position, I think computer says king g7 is the best move. Like, okay. But here, Jakovir's like, I'm just gonna take this pawn and then let you have fun with the bishops. Like, I'm allowing check. You have the bishop pair. Like, I'm allowing a lot of things, but I'm gonna take the pawn, and my pawn is just 1, 2, 3 squares away from queening. If I can get that pawn to the end of the board, I win the game. That is what Jakovir is saying. So after queen takes a6, Hans tries bishop e4, then Jakovir's just sidesteps. Jakovir's like, I don't mind a queen trade. I mean, I'm all good with a queen trade. Like, I can, like, utilize my knights, try to push this pawn. Now, it might be a little bit tricky because of the bishops, but also the bishops are kind of tied down there. And I can see ideas like knight b5 coming and, like, maybe c4, c5 in the right circumstances. Obviously, if knight b5, it might be paired. Well, you'd have to make sure to take care of this. But, like, you know, some maneuver like knight d2, knight c4. I could see it being tricky, especially in a mutual time scramble where knights are very favorable. So understandably, Hans does not trade queens. He goes queen g8 check, but after king f1, tries bishop d3. Again, it looks scary. It looks like Hans has like the bishop pair, and he's invading. But after king e1, there's nothing. There's no queen g1 check. I mean, he tries queen f8, queen e8, which I think we see a move later, queen e7. You just hide the king on d2. And like there's nothing. And in the meantime, white is pushing up the board and winning. So bishop e4 is played, then a7, and Jakovir plays a very brilliant a8 queen. King g7 was like questionable placement of the king. I guess you're trying to avoid like queen b8 check, in which if bishop takes, you just make a new queen. So he tries, king g7. I'm sure that's the first move that kind of came to mind. To where now if you go queen b8, then I believe, I mean, you can just sit there, which I mean, it's still winning because you can make a queen, but king g7 allows them to get into this forking position, so Jakovir can actually just queen the pawn. The idea being that if bishop takes a, there's a royal fork with knight f6. So after all that, after bishop f4 check, so yeah, Jakovir makes the queen. He tries whoops, sorry about that, bishop f4 check, and eventually, when all is said and done, Jakovir is just up a queen for two bishops and is able to convert it pretty flawlessly. Ooh, intermission. All right, so that was the group stage for the Freestyle Chess Tournament in Cape Town, South Africa. Hope you enjoyed the analysis and just seeing how Jakovir just wiped out all of his opponents. So basically, what happens from here is the players have sort of like a kind of like a choose your opponent meeting like ceremony, which I think is pretty interesting because it is interesting to see like the players be like, so who do you want to play? Because obviously you're going to choose like whom you most want to play, whether it's the most weakest or the person you'd most like to play, maybe given play styles or whatnot. And Jakovir went first and chose Parham, which makes sense. I think Parham is probably the weakest player in the field. Basically, I should also explain is that the top three players get to choose because the three players choose from like the kind of remaining like four players. And the fourth player can't really choose, who I think was Magnus actually, because then there's only one player left. So Magnus of the top four kind of got the short end of the stick, but Jakovir went first and chose Parham Maksudlu. Levon Aronian, I believe, went second and chose Hans, which you might be thinking, oh, Hans, but it was between Hans, Vincent Keimer, I believe, or no, Argentine? No, I think Vincent Keimer was still on the board. It was between Hans, Vincent Keimer, or Fabiano. So yeah, you tell me which one you'd rather play. And then basically Arjun got to choose between Vincent Keimer and Fabiano. And I actually maybe thought that like maybe he was going to choose Fabiano, but I guess he has that much respect for Fabiano's game. Chose Vincent, and then Magnus was stuck with Fabiano. So I tried to see there's not necessarily like a pairing like graphic yet. Maybe they haven't updated yet, but basically the round one pairings of the knockout are they should be Sindarov versus Matsulu, Aronian versus Neiman, Magnus versus Fabi, and what am I missing? Arjun versus Vincent Keimer. So that said, hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know if you enjoy these kind of like recaps, these game analysis and things like that. If you do enjoy this video, please feel free to smash that subscribe button. We really appreciate it. Let me know in the comments what you think, what you thought of the games, the players, the format, freestyle chess or whatnot. And with that said, I will let you all get going. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and have a very restful rest of your day or evening, whatever it is for you. Peace.